Hello and welcome to Dragnet Live from OTRGold.com. Happy Friday. I'm your host, Austin Bach. Thank you for being here. Um, Today we're going to be listening to episode 26 of Dragnet, Mrs. Rinard, Albert Berry, the mother-in-law murder. I don't have the historical events since the last broadcast prepped for the beginning of the show, so we'll save that till the end. This is, if you remember from Wednesday, we were listening to episode 18. So now we jump to 26. There's a big gap of programs that are currently unavailable. I'm hopeful that at some point people will find a record of these. But the longer, the more time that passes between the original broadcast and not finding a record, the less likely that it will be. But I'm an optimist, so I'm hopeful that it will appear at some point. But anyway, so normally we've been talking about 1 week's worth of history in between these broadcasts, where now the last episode we listened to was aired on October 1st, 1949, and the one we're listening today is from November 24th, 1949. That's a Thursday. That was Thanksgiving Day in 1949, at least in the United States. I know we got Lee from Canada. I, in my previous job, worked with a team out of Vancouver and Toronto. I know that there's a Thanksgiving in Canada, but it is not on the same day, which makes sense. We have our countries have different history, but so yes, when I say Thanksgiving Day, that's Thanksgiving Day in the United States. And so I have to go and do a bit more research this week. This next couple weeks actually is kind of busier than usual in my life. So I have less time to do the prep thing. So I'm going to be listening. I listened to this one already, but I'm going to be listening again to the episode and then queuing up the historical events since last broadcast. So please stick around for that at the end. I will fill you in on what happened from between October 2nd and November 24th, 1949. Okay, one final thing before we actually two final things before we get going. Again, if you are tuning in from the Old Time Radio Archive and you want to participate in the chat on the side, click the link in the description. It will take you to the OTR Gold YouTube channel. And from there, you can participate. I see some new names in the chat. This is great. I will be highlighting those as we get started. I asked that, if people, as people join, that they tell us where they're tuning in from. I am tuning in. I'm broadcasting or live streaming from Seattle. And it's pretty good weather today. Joshua is a longtime listener. I say long time, he's been here nearly every episode. We've been going for, like 12 to 14 episodes. I don't know, because the episode number doesn't help because we skip some occasionally when they're unavailable. But he started the habit of, like Joe Friday, giving the weather report out where it is. So if you haven't listened to Dragnet yet, pay attention to the beginning of the episode. The lead detective, or the main character in all these stories, likes to start with the time and the weather from typically Los Angeles, because these stories are based on the Los Angeles Police Department. So it's always funny when we see the weather report from others. If you want to share what the weather's like where you're at, please do. Please join the chat. Great. So yeah, we'll get started, and then we'll be active in the chat. I keep it muted the entire time to, for those of you that just want to close your eyes and like get teleported back to 1949. And then I'll unmute at the end. I'll respond to the chat that's been happening, and this week I will share the historical events since the last broadcast. So give me 1 second. I'll queue up the episode and we'll get started. Hello and welcome to Dragnet from OTRGold.com. This episode will begin after a brief message from our sponsors.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to hear is true. Only the names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of long cigarettes, brings you Dragnet.
You're a detective sergeant. You're assigned to homicide detail. A vicious killer has taken the life of a 62-year-old woman. Suspicion points in only one direction. The murderer was heartless, cold-blooded. Your job, get him.
If you want a long cigarette, smoke the best of long cigarettes. Smoke Fatima. It's the long cigarette that contains an essential ingredient of all the very popular cigarettes, Turkish tobacco. That's why you see the Turkish symbols on the attractive golden yellow Fatima package. That's why Fatima has a much different, much better flavor and aroma than any other long cigarette. That's why Fatima doubles and redoubles its smokers. Yes, if you want a long cigarette, smoke the best of long cigarettes. Smoke Fatima.
Dragnet, the documented drama of an actual crime. For the next 30 minutes, in cooperation with the Los Angeles Police Department, you will travel step by step on the side of the law through an actual case from official police files. From beginning to end, from crime to punishment, Dragnet is the story of your police force in action.
It was Saturday, November 5th. It was foggy in Los Angeles. We were working the day watch out of homicide. My partner's Ben Romero. The boss is Ed Backstrand, chief of detectives. My name's Friday. It was 3:35 p.m. when I got to room 42. Homicide.
Long distance.
This is Friday in homicide. I'd like to place a call to Mr. Frank Rinard in Murphy, Idaho. The number is 761.
Frank Rinard, Murphy, Idaho, 761.
Yeah, that's right. The call's been cleared with the business office.
All right. Do you want me to call you back, Sergeant?
No, I'll hang on.
Okay, I'll place it for you. Long distance? Long distance, Mr. Frank Rinard, Murphy, Idaho, Murphy, 761. Thank you. New Haven, Connecticut. Your number, please? Track the call to Madison, 7961. Thank you. The time and charges when the call's completed, operator. Rate operator? You ready to put a man out? Yes, Murphy, Idaho, routing and person rate. TC, NAM, PA, Napa. All right. Operator, the number is 4C. All right. 160 plus. 160, thank you. Welcome. Through Boise. I'm calling Napa. Murphy, 761. Thank you. Keep ringing, 761. They're ringing the number, Sergeant.
Okay, thanks.
Hello?
Mr. Frank Rinard, please. Los Angeles calling.
Who do you want?
Mr. Frank Rinard, please. Los Angeles calling.
I'm Frank Rinard.
Go ahead, please. All right, Sergeant, go ahead.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, Frank Rinard.
Yeah, who's this?
This is Sergeant Friday, Los Angeles Police Department. I've got an urgent message for you.
For me? Well, what's the matter?
Your wife, Dolores, asked me to call you. Something's happened to your mother.
What do you mean? What's happened?
I better let your wife tell you. She wants you back in Los Angeles right away.
Look, what's this all about? I can't leave my job now.
You better come. Your mother's been murdered.
Talk to the skipper, Joe. He's on his way in.
That's good.
Did you call my husband? Did you?
He's flying down from Idaho tonight. Be here in the morning.
You tell him about me? The trouble I'm in?
I told him his mother was murdered. That's all I told him, Mrs. Rinard.
What am I going to say to Frank? He always sided in with his mother. He'll never believe me. What can I tell him?
Jury can give you more trouble than your husband can. What you going to tell them?
Are you stupid or something? How many times do I have to say it? I didn't kill her. I didn't kill her.
It's a small room, Ms. Rinard. We can hear you. Sit down, please.
I won't sit down. You're not pinning this on me because I didn't do it. Anybody could have killed the old hag, but I didn't.
Will you sit down, please?
I don't have to take this. I'm no tramp. Keeping me in here, asking me questions. I told you all I know.
Look, you're in a bad spot. I hope you realize that.
I didn't kill her.
Ms. Rinard, how long have you and your mother-in-law been living together in the house on Chavez Road?
Since Frank took the job up in Idaho. About 6 months. He said it'd be better for me while he was away living with her.
Your neighbors told us you didn't get along very well with your mother-in-law.
That's right, I didn't. She hated me, I hated her.
You used to fight with her, is that right? You hit her.
Only a couple of times. She called me dirty names. I hit her. She pulled me by the hair. I hated her like everything. I didn't kill her.
Once more, Ms. Rinard, would you mind telling us how you spent your time since early this morning, where you went, what you did, everything?
I told you already everything.
Will you tell us again, please?
I got up about 9:15. I had a cup of coffee and then I got dressed. The old lady was on the back porch doing the washing.
What did your mother-in-law do for a living?
I told you. She took in washing. After I got dressed, I left the house. About 10 minutes after 9, I went downtown to the dentist. He filled a tooth for me. This one here, you can ask him.
What time did you leave the dentist's office?
About 10:15, maybe 20 after. You can ask him.
What'd you do after that?
I walked around window shopping.
Did you buy anything, talk to anybody?
I told you no.
What time did you get home?
12:30. I went in the bedroom. The old lady was on the floor. Blood all over. I felt her heart. It wasn't beating.
Is that when you got the blood on your dress?
Yeah. Now that's all I'm going to say. 3 times I told you the same story already.
And you still can't account for your time between 10:20 this morning and the time you found the body and called the police at 12:30.
I told you. I left the dentist. I went window shopping. Then I walked home.
And during that time, you didn't talk to anyone and no one saw you.
Lots of people saw me. People on the street downtown. I'm no tramp. I don't talk to everybody.
None of your neighbors saw you come home, Ms. Rinard?
Of course they didn't see me. I cut across the back lot up from San Jose Avenue. I came in the back way.
The lady who lives next door to you. She says she was in the backyard about noontime. She stayed there till after 1 o'clock. She didn't see you come in the back way.
Then she's a liar. She's a dirty liar.
You and your husband took out an insurance policy on your mother-in-law last year. Is that right, Ms. Rinard?
Sure it is. What of it?
$5,000?
Yeah, so what?
You know a man by the name of George Martino?
No.
You better tell the truth, Ms. Rinard.
All right, so I do. He's a friend of mine.
You've been running around with him since your husband's been away.
None of your business. I do what I want.
Your mother-in-law found out about Martino. That's what you fought about most of the time.
Oh, she was crazy. He's a friend of mine, that's all.
Are you telling the truth, Ms. Rinard?
Martino's a boyfriend of mine. I told you, that's all.
Your mother-in-law found out you were running around with him. She warned you if you didn't shake Martino, she'd write your husband. You said you'd kill her if she did.
That's a lie.
That's what your mother-in-law told one of the neighbor ladies.
And I said it just to scare her. One night I was drinking. We had a fight. She was yapping at me all night. I said it just to scare her.
But she wrote the letter anyway.
And that's what she said. But I didn't kill her.
You had the time, the motive, and the opportunity.
It wasn't me. I didn't kill her.
Interrogation room Friday.
This is Brennan, Joe.
Yeah, Bill. Where are you?
Santa Monica. Picked up George Martino.
Ben and I drove Mrs. Rinard to Lincoln Heights Jail, 5th floor, and had her booked on suspicion of 187 PC. When we checked back in at the office, Brennan and Wiseman, the other 2 men on the case with Ben and I, were questioning George Martino in the interrogation room. Ben and I stood by. Martino admitted only 2 things. He had been running around with Mrs. Rinard since her husband left town, and he had heard Mrs. Rinard express a desire to do away with her mother-in-law. After the questioning of Martino, Sergeant Brennan, Ben and I met with Chief Ed Backstrand. It was 5:15 p.m.
You got everything but the murder weapon, huh?
That and Mrs. Renard's confession. She ought to come through, huh, Joe?
I don't know. She's scared, but she's still got a smart mouth. What about Martino, Brennan? You think he had a hand in it?
I don't think so. We spent most of the afternoon talking to him. He hasn't got the guts. We took a statement.
And does he have an alibi?
Solid.
What was the cause of death?
Strangulation, multiple fractures of the skull.
All the motives are with Mrs. Rinard, Chief. Pretty clear-cut job.
No evidence of robbery or burglary, I guess.
A couple of dresser drawers in the bedroom were emptied on the floor and clothes tossed all around. Pretty obvious plan to make it look like burglary.
Maybe.
We found 3 $1 bills in plain sight. They were on the floor near the body. If a burglar went through the stuff, he wouldn't have missed that money.
And it shouldn't be too much trouble tying it up.
Shouldn't be, Skipper.
Friday and Romero, you follow the case through. Just a minute. Hello, Backstrand. Yeah? What? All right, I'll send him over. Lee Jones. Just finished checking the evidence at the crime lab.
Yeah?
He thinks Mrs. Renard's innocent.
There they are, fellas. Facts don't lie.
But she had every reason in the world to kill the old lady.
In my book, she couldn't have killed her.
All right, let's have it, Lee. How does the evidence add up?
That's just it, Joe. It doesn't. Take a look. The dress Mrs. Renard was wearing when she found the body.
That's it. Blood smears near the hem.
2 smears, that's all. Now, if she murdered her mother-in-law, there should be more blood on this dress, and it shouldn't be smeared.
How do you mean?
First of all, the manner in which the old lady was killed. Head was battered in. Must have bled profusely. No question about that.
All right, go ahead.
Whoever murdered the old lady must have stains all over their clothes. Here's the important part. Because of the nature of the wound, it would have stained in drops, not smears.
Well, how can you tell the difference? Maybe these are drop stains on her desk.
They're not. I checked them with a microscope. Only the higher ribs of the cloth are stained. The smears, nothing else. But a drop forms its own definite drop pattern and permeates the cloth, soaks in.
No signs of that on her dress.
Not a one. Now, here's the silk scarf the old lady was strangled with.
Yeah?
Here's what I found in the knot tied in the scarf. A blonde hair, wavy.
Old lady had dark hair. So does Miss Renard.
So does her boyfriend.
That's what I mean. This blonde hair is one of 2 things that didn't belong at that murder scene.
What else you got?
This here.
What is it, Lee?
Small piece of plastic from a gun butt, I'd say. See here? Crisscross surface and a little smooth area here.
Yeah.
The killer could have hit the old lady with the butt of a gun.
And a piece of the stock could have chipped off like this, huh?
Miss Renard doesn't own a gun. Neither did her mother-in-law.
Well, where does that leave us?
I don't know, Joe. There's the stuff. You can't disregard it. Maybe you can explain it.
Yeah. How?
Well, first prove this dress isn't the one Mrs. Rinard was wearing this morning. Then find the dress she did wear.
We know she wore this when the dentist identified it, and so did 2 of the neighbors.
That's what I mean. The dress is too clean, doesn't belong.
Yeah.
This blonde hair, this piece of gun butt, they don't belong either.
Well, then you think she's innocent.
You're looking at the evidence. What do you think?
6 p.m. Saturday, November 5th. Ben and I went back to the office and met with Brennan, Wiseman, and Ed Backstrand. The open and shut case against Mrs. Rinard was up in the air, but we still weren't sure that she was innocent of the murder of her mother-in-law. Ben and I drove to the Lincoln Heights jail and interviewed the suspect again. She agreed to submit to a lie detector test. We drove back to the office, contacted Sergeant Berger, the department's polygraph man, and set up a special test for the following day. The next morning, we met with Berger and formulated a list of key questions, and then we picked up Mrs. Rinard and brought her to the 3rd floor of the Old City Jail building, the polygraph room. At 10:33 a.m., the test got underway. As usual, Sergeant Berger conducted the interview alone. Backstrand, Ben, and I waited outside.
Well, how about Mrs. Renard's husband? Get in town yet?
He's due in around noon, Skipper.
Got a smoke?
Yeah. Here you are, Ed.
Yeah, thanks. Time is it now?
11:25.
Here's Berger now.
That's it, Ed. What'd you get?
I can study the chart a little more. The results are pretty well defined, though.
How's it look?
No reaction to the key questions.
What's your opinion?
I don't think she did it.
You are listening to Dragnet, authentic stories of your police force in action. And in leading magazines this week, you'll see this authentic story.
Headline: Fatima's sensational growth sets a record for long cigarettes.
Then you'll read the actual reasons smokers give for changing to Fatima.
Fatima is different. It's mild and has a wonderful flavor. Fatima's best.
These are the words of Miss Pamela Bookman of New York, where Fatima has increased its smokers 132%.
Fatima tastes much better than any other long cigarette. It's the best.
Says Mr. James S. Winterhalter of Detroit, where Fatima smokers have increased 348%.
I like the flavor, and Fatima is mild. It's the best long cigarette.
That's the statement of Mrs. Mary C. Werdeman of Los Angeles, where Fatima has increased its smokers 545%. Yes, more and more long cigarette smokers every day agree. A change to Fatima is a change to the best. Enjoy Fatima yourself. Best of long cigarettes.
8 a.m., Monday, November 7th. Mrs. Rinard was released from custody. We questioned her husband, Frank Rinard, briefly. He could tell us nothing more than we already knew. Brennan and Wiseman were called back on the case, and together the four of us started over again from the beginning. We had a dead body, 2 pieces of physical evidence to work with, no idea how to fit them together, and no suspects. We went back to the Chavez Road neighborhood where the murdered woman lived and started pushing doorbells. We canvassed the neighborhood for 3 days, and we uncovered one slim lead.
He was selling magazines, officer. Went door to door, right up the street here. Young fellow.
Could you describe the man for us, please?
Nothing to talk about. Pasty face, pimply complexion, blonde hair.
5:30 p.m. Wednesday, November the 9th. Ben and I met with Brennan and Wiseman in Ed Backstrand's office to compare notes. Together, we had more than a dozen reports of the magazine salesman's presence in the neighborhood just prior to the murder of Mrs. Renard's mother-in-law. The various descriptions of the man which we obtained from the people in the neighborhood tallied closely.
About 6 feet, 170 pounds, pimply complexion, blonde hair, fast talker. About 25 years old.
As far as we know, Skipper, he was the only stranger in the neighborhood last Saturday morning. Only one that people remember, anyway.
How close did you trace him to the Rinard house?
You got your list there, Brennan?
Yeah. There you are.
Thanks. Let's see. Well, he picked up his tracks down on Floresta Street, sold a couple of descriptions there, then he headed up Landers Avenue onto Chavez Road.
Yeah.
The Renards live at 2280 Chavez Road. That salesman talked to the woman at 2274 Chavez. That's 3 doors away from the Renards.
When was he seen there?
Let me see. Where is that, Brennan?
Oh, on the 15-7 sheet, Joe. Didn't have enough room on the report.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Mrs. John Rico, 2274 Chavez. The guy was there about 11:45 Saturday morning.
Well, that puts him in the running. First time he ever showed in that neighborhood?
First time, Skipper. Fresh kid, not a very good salesman.
Here's the name of the company he's working for, the Harrison News Distributors.
You check with them?
No, they're closed for the night. We'll call them the first thing tomorrow.
Good. Here's something else for you. I had a call from Frank Rinard this afternoon.
What'd he have to say?
Seems in the excitement just after the murder, Mrs. Rinard overlooked a couple of things.
What's that?
Well, they're missing a yellow table model radio. It was in the bedroom where the old lady was killed.
Yeah, well, that ties in with a robbery motive, huh?
And they're missing a ring, too. Belonged to Mrs. Renard. Topaz ring. Supposed to be worth a little money.
But she didn't notice it was gone until today.
That's right.
You got the serial number on the radio?
Yeah, right here.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, Brennan, here we are. It's an Emerson model 511, 180,000, 277609.
A lot of small radios in town.
There's only one with that serial number on it. Track it down.
A complete description of the Topaz ring and the serial numbers and description of the yellow table model radio were sent to the pawn shop detail. The information was then placed on the stolen property list and relayed to every pawn shop operator in the city. The next morning, Ben and I interviewed the manager of the Harrison News Distributing Company. There, the suspect had given his name as Sam Bricker. We checked out his home address. Turned out to be a gas station in North Hollywood. We took the suspect's job application blank with a specimen of his handwriting, and then we drove back to the office. Sam Bricker. We were unable to get a make on the name from the Record Bureau. We checked the cards on every known criminal who was cataloged in the oddity file as having a pimply complexion. None of them matched. That night, we got out an APB and a radiogram. The suspect's trail led from one salesman's job to the next. On his last job, he gave his name as Albert Berry. His address is 1430 Palo Alto Drive. That was in the Echo Lake District. Ben and I drove out to check it.
1428, 1430. There it is, Joe.
Yeah. At least it's not a gas station, huh? Come on.
Tiresome, huh?
Yeah, I could stand a change.
Yes, what is it?
We're looking for an Albert Berry, ma'am. Does he live here?
Miss Berry, I'm sorry. He and his wife moved 4 days ago.
We identified ourselves as police officers and had the landlady, a Mrs. Catherine Hoffman, show us the apartment which Barry and his wife had occupied. It was still vacant. In one of the closets in the apartment, we found a cheap overnight bag. The lock on it was broken and one of the seams had ripped.
I forgot about that old bag, and Mr. Berry told me I could throw it away.
Take a look. I'm in.
Yeah.
How long has Barry been married? Do you know, Mrs. Hoffman?
No, I don't. But the way they acted, lovey-dovey all the time, I don't think they've been together long.
Hey, Joe. Look, some kind of an identification tag.
Yeah, let me see. What's up here? It's a tool disc, it looks like, doesn't it? Jameson Larrabee, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
You're not after Mr. Barry, are you, officer?
Yes, ma'am, we are. Did he leave a forwarding address?
I wish he did. I'm holding 3 letters for Mrs. Barry in my apartment right now.
May we see them, please?
Certainly. Would you step this way, please? My apartment's just across the hall.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like a bottle of beer or something?
No, ma'am, thanks.
Let's see. I thought I put... Yes, here they are. 3 of them, Sergeant. From her folks, I think. Mrs. Barry's from Fresno.
Oh, that's good. You want to copy down this return address, ma'am?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. That's C.K. Ulrich, U-L-R-I-C-K. 525 North Lamona, Fresno.
Yeah, I got it.
There you are, Miss Hoffman. By the way, did the Barrys say they'd call for their mail?
Mrs. Barry did. That's why I'm holding on to it.
All right. Just one more question. Do you remember if Mr. and Mrs. Barry had a radio?
Yes, they did. A small one.
Do you remember what brand it was?
No, I don't. It had a yellow case. That's all I remember.
Before we left, we called Ed Backstrand, and he had an immediate stakeout placed at the apartment house in case the Barrys returned to pick up their mail. Ben and I went back to the office and placed a call to the Pittsburgh Police Department. We gave them the description and the number of the tool disc, which we'd found in Barry's old suitcase. They said they'd check with the Jameson Larrabee Company in the morning, and then they'd call us back. That night, Ben and I drove to Fresno and checked in at the police station up there. 2 officers were assigned to stake out the Ulrich home. We interviewed Mr. Ulrich, who identified himself as Albert Barry's father-in-law. He told us his daughter had married the murder suspect 8 months before, and he gave us pictures of Barry taken at the wedding. Ulrich told us that he'd catch a Santa Fe train out of Fresno the next morning. He wanted to be in Los Angeles to take his daughter home when Barry was apprehended. It was almost 2 a.m. when Ben and I left Fresno and started back for Los Angeles. We checked in at the office at 10 minutes past 8 the next morning. At 8:35, the call came through from the Pittsburgh Police Department.
What did they say, Joe?
It was a tool disc, all right. Jameson Larrabee Company, issued 18 months ago to one of their workers.
They give a name?
Albert Barry. 11 a.m. Monday, December the 5th. 1 month to the day since the 62-year-old woman had been beaten to death. The pictures of Barry and his wife, which had been taken at their wedding, were printed up in wholesale lots and distributed to all points. Mr. Ulrich, Barry's father-in-law, arrived in town and got himself a hotel room. We waited. There was no report from the stakeout at the apartment house. We checked back in at the office at 5 minutes to 1. I'll get it. Homicide, Friday.
This is Mr. Ulrich, Sergeant. I just got a call from my wife in Fresno. I thought you'd want to know.
What's that?
The wife got a letter from Norma. They're living in South Pasadena, an apartment.
You got the address there?
Yes, sir. That's what the wife called about. It's 134 Norway Terrace.
When was the letter mailed, do you know?
Wife said it was postmarked December 3rd, day before yesterday.
Get your coat on, Ulrich. We'll be right over. Ben and I picked up Mr. Ulrich at his hotel and drove to the South Pasadena address. Barry and his wife had the apartment on the top floor. Neither of them were at home. The landlord let us in with a pass key. In the bedroom, we found a small yellow radio. We checked the serial numbers. They matched. It was the same radio stolen from the Rinard house. In the bedroom closet, we found 2 suitcases. We checked through them.
Yeah, nothing in this one, Joe.
Here we are. Look at these.
What are they, Sergeant?
Pair of plastic gun butts.
Let's see, Joe.
One of them's been chipped, see?
Sergeant, somebody coming up the stairs.
All right, let's get in the living room. Be quiet.
Ed, what are you doing here? Who are these men?
Police, Norma. They want Albert. He killed a woman.
Dad.
It's all right, Norma. It'll be all right.
Did you know your husband killed a woman, Miss Barry?
He just told me last Saturday. We've been running away for a month now. Moving all the time. I wanted to know why. So he told me. He said I was in it as much as he was. And I'm tired of running.
Why did he kill her? Did he tell you that?
He said he broke in the house. He didn't know anyone was home. The old woman was in the bedroom. She started to cry out. He had a gun. Hit her with it.
Where's your husband now?
I don't know. Said he'd come home for dinner. About 5. I bought the groceries.
What time you got, Ben?
3:30. That ring you're wearing, Miss Barry, did your husband give you that?
Yes, why?
What kind of a stone is that?
Topaz. Bert gave it to me. Why?
Nothing. We'll wait. 5 o'clock came and went. Barry failed to show. 5:30. Ulrich started to get nervous. 6 o'clock. 6:30. No sign of Barry. I went to the window and kept an eye on the street below. At 6:45, a light green Nash sedan pulled to a stop in front of the apartment house. A man got out and went into the main floor entrance.
It's Bert. I'll let him in.
All right. How long have you had the new car?
A couple of days. Bert got it credit. What do you want me to do now?
Does he have a key to the apartment here?
He lost it.
Okay, when he rings, let him in. Just act natural. Ben?
Yeah.
You cover me. I'll get the cuffs on him.
Right.
Hi, Bert.
Look out, Joe! All right, drop it, Barry.
Okay, Ben.
Yeah, he's fast with a gun.
Nice looking, isn't he, Sergeant? You'd never think he'd kill anybody.
Come on, let's take him in.
I love him. I still love him. But you're a cop. You wouldn't understand.
That's right. I wouldn't understand. I'm a cop.
The story you have just heard was true. Only the names were changed to protect the innocent.
On February 16th, 1947, trial was held in Superior Court, Department 82, City and County of Los Angeles, State of California. In a moment, the results of that trial.
Earlier tonight, you heard the reports of amazing increases in Fatima smokers from New York to Los Angeles. Yes, all over the country, Fatima is doubling and redoubling its sales. And here's reason one.
Fatima is the long cigarette that contains an essential ingredient of all the very popular cigarettes, Turkish tobacco.
Reason two.
Fatima has a much different, much better flavor and aroma than any other long cigarette.
Reason three.
To millions of smokers, the name Fatima has always stood for the best in cigarette quality. Smoke Fatima, the best of all long cigarettes.
Albert Ralph Berry was tried and convicted of murder in the first degree. His wife, Norma Berry, was found innocent of the charge that she harbored a criminal. She was returned home with her father. Berry was executed in the lethal gas chamber at the state penitentiary. You have just heard Dragnet, a new series of authentic cases from official files. Technical advice for Dragnet comes from the Office of Acting Chief of Police W.A. Wharton, Los Angeles Police Department.
Tonight's program is dedicated to Private Hubert W. Estes of the District of Columbia Metropolitan Police Department, who on the night of May 16th, 1947, gave his life so that yours might be more secure.
Fatima Cigarettes, best of long cigarettes, has brought you Dragnet, portion transcribed from Los Angeles.
Be sure to hear songs by Morton Downey tonight on NBC.
All right. Hope everyone enjoyed that episode. Thank you, Lee, for always wishing us well at the end of these episodes. We had active chat today. I want to quickly go through some of these things. I can't stay as long as I normally can. Again, my life is busier at the moment. Hopefully in like a week and a half we'll be good and I can take some, stretch these out. Oh man. Okay. I was active in the chat and I totally forgot about the covering the length of time So I'm going to do a little bit of screen sharing, and we're going to go through these together. I went down the rabbit hole on product placement. Well, actually, hang on. There's a few things here. So as I mentioned in the thing, I wrote down some notes, scribbled down my notes on this scrap piece of paper. As far as I can tell, I think this is the first Dragnet episode that had a sponsor, at least the first one that exists. And yeah, I think So Over it pointed out, I forget, but you can tell. So Fatima, the cigarette sponsor, this is the first episode that I remember the chief of detectives asking for a smoke, and they take a smoke break. So it stood out to me as being heavily influenced by their brand new sponsor. Then it also made me think about how, it's sometimes we look back at certain eras and we think, wow, like they're pushing smoking like crazy, like what's going on? That's insane. But then I think there are things that happen today that are gonna be just as weird to future audiences, and at least in terms of advertising, I think why were cigarettes like advertised everywhere? And my first thought, and this is just me shooting from the hip, so I could be wrong on this, but I think it's a high margin product, so it's cheap to produce, but they can sell it for a good price, and it's addictive. So once you get someone interested in the product, they will naturally come back and buy more of it. And so, uh, if we think about who are some of the biggest sponsors today of certain entertainment, like Coca-Cola, someone mentioned Pepsi as well, and I think it falls into the same category of being a high margin product that has an addictive quality to it. Just sugar in general is addictive. So if they can sell you on a uh, Coca-Cola, or Pepsi, then you'll naturally come back because your body starts to crave it. Yeah, where people are also mentioning other things. So that just kind of stood out as like, you know, there's this trend towards less sugar in drinks, which is good to see. And maybe we'll get to a point where like the only sodas that are available are these low sugar options, and people will look back at like the sugar content in Coca-Cola, which I love. I love Coca-Cola. I love Pepsi. I actually interned there at Pepsi Cola, which interesting factoid. Um, they're selling products, and PepsiCo owns Frito-Lay, so they own Doritos, they own Lay's potato chips, they own Gatorade, they own Quaker Oats, they own a bunch of different um, products, and some are healthier than others. So some are better for you than others. But the CEO at the time, and uh, the company itself talked about products in two different categories. There were the good for you products, like the low sugar, hydration drinks, or their bottled water or something. And then there were the fun for you products. So from a marketing standpoint, they didn't say this is like junk food. They say this is the fun for you stuff, and you should just eat it because it's fun, but eat it in smaller quantities. Um, but anyway, I just found that parallel to be interesting. It seems like the people that have the highest margins can spend the most on ads, and so we see their stuff everywhere. Coke sponsors everything. Pepsi sponsors everything. They were sponsoring the Super Bowl halftime show for like 8 years or something, and just recently passed it off. Okay, there's a few other things. Also, this is the first stream where I set the settings to ultra low latency. So there's fewer seconds between when my camera is recording me and when you're seeing the same thing. I did that, or when the episode is being played and when you're hearing it. I did it to make the chat more interactive. So hopefully that worked. The downside of dropping the latency is um, there's no like auto-generated captions on the fly because it doesn't have time to process it, and there could be quality issues. So if anybody noticed quality issues today, as compared to previous weeks, please let me know, because this is the first time I set it to ultra low latency. If it seems like nothing's changed, then that's great, and I'll keep it here so that this back and forth can be as like quick as possible. Joshua mentioned, so there was chat in the comments of some of the past videos about where can we find the Dragnet TV show. And sounds like the episodes from the 1960s are still, they're kind of all over YouTube, but it's harder to find the content from the 1950s. Joshua says those episodes are available on Roku, which if you have a Roku device, that's easy. But I think if you don't have a Roku device, they still have apps on other platforms that let you access their content library. So I was going to check that during the stream, but I didn't get to it. But something to check out there. Want to shout out the new people that we saw in the chat. I mean, I'm grateful for everyone, the people that have been here for forever and keep coming back. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But I noticed Timothy and Barina. Sorry, I stuttered on your name a bit. I think Barina is actually from the Pacific Northwest, not too far from where I live. So welcome to you both. Okay, then I'm just going through my name. I forgot to mention these. So this is, if you're Cindy, or if you know Cindy, or Cindy, if you watch this later, this is your last chance to message me and get one of these, because on Monday we're just gonna do a draw from the comments. I'm gonna say a secret word, well, not a secret word. I'm just gonna pick a word. It'll probably be something about that episode that I'll ask people to put that word in a comment down below. And then after 24 hours, I will pick a person at random, and I will, from those comments, and then they'll have their choice of these two. And then the other one will be given away at the 1,000 subscriber mark, which we're coming up on. So maybe we'll give them both away next week. It'd be sweet if we crossed 1,000 next week. Speaking of vintage radios, did you hear in today's episode, the thief picked, or the murderer, the burglar who became a murderer, stole a radio. And since they said the make and model number, I went and I looked it up. So that's that's the first thing I want to show you. Let me share my screen. This was an Emerson 5. Let's see if I can zoom in for you guys. Here we go. They said this was, the thief picked up a yellow Emerson model 511. So there's a couple different images. If you search Emerson model 511, you'll see a few different, well, there's like 2 different styles. But this is the one that I see most consistently in the comments. So I'm assuming this is similar to the radio that was mentioned in the show. It's got a very unique style. But whenever they add that type of specificity, I like to go and look it up so I can further visualize what's going on. So there's that. Let me stop sharing. There's a few other things. When they're first interviewing Miss Rinard at the beginning, and they're accusing her of having, they're asking her about her alibi. If you go back and listen to it, she talks about going to the dentist, and then her voice does something that makes me envision that she's got her finger in her mouth, like pulling her lip back, because she says, I was at the dentist, and then I put in quotes like, he was working on my tooth. This one here, you can ask him. But listen to when she says, this one here, you can ask him. It sounds like she's standing by the microphone, like pulling her cheek back. And it would be awesome. I wish there was video of all these performers huddled around their microphone doing stuff. They probably, I imagine after certain performances, even when it's serious, when someone really sells it, they probably just have to cover the mic, look away, and just like in astonishment or laugh or something, because I think just the face she was making when to do that performance was probably great. So go back and listen to it. See if you agree with me that you think she's pulling her cheek back when she says it, because that's what it sounded like to me. Then product placement. I just have a few more things. Okay, I'm gonna try and say something in French, but I don't speak French, so bear with me. Sorry, and I'm seeing comments come by, but I'm trying to get through this other stuff. I just saw Josh was comment about the burglar could have just bought it on Amazon. Jeez, exactly. If only he knew. Okay, product placement. So I went looking at the Wikipedia article for product placement. I zoomed in. Hopefully that you can see that. I was looking for the first known thing. So it says origins. Product placement began in the 19th century. By the time Jules Verne published the adventure novel Around the World in 80 Days, his fame had led transport and shipping companies to lobby to be mentioned in their story. Whether he actually was paid to do so remains unknown. So it's been a while since I've read that book. I don't even know which transport companies were mentioned, but this one is interesting. So, and this is where I'm going to try my French. Similarly, a painting by Manet shows a bar at the Folie Bergère. I had to look that up on YouTube. I probably still didn't say it right, but the Folie Bergère, which it says is a cabaret music hall in Paris. It had distinctive bottles placed to either end of the counter. So I'll zoom in here so you can see. Whoa. These bottles right here. So this red triangle, and then there's another one over here, this red triangle. So how do I get out of here? So those bottles can easily be identified as Bass beer. And so people think that Manet was paid. So it says, again, the painting by him shows a bar with distinctive bottles placed to either end of the counter. It's immediately recognizable as Bass beer. His motivations for including branded products are unknown. It may be that it simply added to the work's authenticity, but on the other hand, the artist may have received some payment in return for its inclusion. So it's speculation. We don't know if that was the first one ever, or it probably wasn't the first ever, but interesting history to share. Let me see the last thing I had here. I'm making sure I covered everything. The radio, the Fatima sponsorship, Dragnet on Roku, low latency, giveaway, and the performance. Great. So that was everything I had scribbled down. Let me go through the comments one more time. See if there's any great things we want to share before we drop. Got to scroll down. So over it. Says it's a shame that the original Dragnet TV show wasn't preserved in large numbers. So few episodes known to exist. So yeah, I haven't gone down this rabbit hole yet. That surprises me actually that there aren't a bunch of those shows that are preserved. I wonder why that is. Like, why do you think we have more radio programs than TV programs? My first guess would be maybe it's because it was easier to record off the radio. Like, audio recording equipment was more readily available, perhaps, than TV recording equipment, as TV was just starting. You know, like now when I grew up, we had a VCR. So if your favorite movie was going to be broadcast on, on network television, you could queue up your VCR and record it. And then I remember, just when we're talking about VCRs, I remember having those like dedicated tape rewinders. And if you were cool, which my family wasn't cool, we didn't have one. But if you were cool, you had one that was like shaped like a Ferrari, and you could put it in the Ferrari and it would rewind it. And it was super fast because it was a sports car. I remember seeing those at Radio Shack. Sorry, my camera is going nuts right now. It's trying to find me. Okay. Just give me 1 second, going through these. Oh, shout out to the channel Pics and Portraits. Joshua says they do compilations of old advertising. I'll have to check that out after. Regarding sponsors, Sam says high margin and networks could get serious sponsorship money and instead of having to sustain something. I don't know. But I think, yeah, you get high margins plus they're like the mega corporation. So you land one Coca-Cola or one PepsiCo and they have marketing budget for a really long time instead of trying to find a bunch of smaller companies to make up the same amount of money. I think maybe that's where you're going. Beer sponsors and sports. Yeah. Okay. Biggest people here, energy drinks, beer, and gambling primarily. So I think all of those fall into the category that we described earlier, that like semi-addictive and at least semi-addictive. Some of these are more addictive and high margin for the advertiser and crypto. Joshua trying to quit energy drinks. Good luck. Good luck. I'm currently trying to do no added sugar. It is hard. I mean, I can eat fruit, natural sugars, but no added sugar. A lot of my favorite foods have added sugar. FDR gave tobacco farmers a deferment during World War II. It was considered a vital crop. That is very interesting to know. I mean, I think that, yeah, they had like rationed cigarettes as well, or like cigarettes in the rations, as far as I know. And that became like a currency amongst the soldiers trading for things. Personally, see, I don't drink, but I've been to places where for their work events or things where they give you drink tickets. And since I don't drink, it's like whichever friend contacted me first for my extra drink tickets, it became like a currency. Yeah. I became people's closest friend. Let's see. People talking about their favorite drinks. Moxie, is that an energy drink? I don't know, but since we're talking about energy drinks, that's probably what I think it was. Great. Well, I think I went through all those comments. Thank you all for sharing, and thank you for being here. I wish you all a great weekend. Let's see what we're gonna listen to on Monday. Monday we're going to be Monday's going to be episode 27, Spring Street Gang Juveniles. So have a great weekend. Last call for Cindy. Cindy, please contact me over the weekend. Otherwise, join in on Monday for another radio giveaway. Have a great one, everybody. Thank you for being here.